Today, we're going to break down a system that's designed to make you smarter, week after week. It's a framework for turning your raw experience into real expertise. And it all starts by understanding a huge problem that almost all of us get completely wrong. The problem isn't that you're working too hard. It's that you're learning too little from the effort you put in. Your greatest tool for success is already inside your head, but you only access it by looking backward. So we're going to show you the 5 questions that absolutely guarantee you get smarter every single week. It's a simple, counterintuitive discipline that turns your chaotic weekly experience into hard-won wisdom.
And this right here, this is the central conflict most of us are stuck in without even knowing it. Over on the left, you've got pure, raw effort. You know, the hamster wheel? It feels super productive, right? You're busy, you're in meetings, you're clearing emails, but all it really does is reinforce your current habits, the good and the bad, embedding them deeper. It's the fast track to burnout and just stagnation. But on the right, you have something totally different, evaluated experience. This is the deliberate, strategic act of hitting pause, looking back, and pulling out the critical lessons. This is the path that builds real expertise and truly unstoppable momentum.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We've just talked about the paradox. Next, we're going to diagnose the real enemy here, what we call the busyness trap. Then we'll get to the solution, the 5-question framework. We'll even dive into the neuroscience that proves why this physically rewires your brain, before we wrap up with a simple guide to install this upgrade into your life, starting this week. So let's really diagnose the problem. What is this invisible force that keeps smart, hardworking people just stuck, repeating the same mistakes, feeling like they're spinning their wheels year after year? Well, we call it the busyness trap.
The busyness trap is the state of constant motion that feels productive, but really isn't. It's answering emails while you're on a call, jumping from task to task without taking a breath. You know, you clear your inbox, but you haven't actually moved your real goals forward 1 inch. In this state, your brain never, ever gets a chance to pause, to process, to actually encode the lessons from your actions. Think about it. You just lived through a dozen tiny experiments this week, but you forgot to record any of the data. And so you're pretty much doomed to run the same failed experiments all over again next week.
And this is what traps us in a state of unexamined habits. It's basically your brain running on autopilot. And the problem is, that autopilot might be programmed with some seriously inefficient routes. See, your brain's #1 goal is to save energy. So it creates these shortcuts, habits, for everything you do over and over. But here's the kicker. It doesn't care if it's a good shortcut or a bad one. So you keep checking your email 50 times a day because it's an automatic, unexamined habit, even though it completely shatters your focus and wastes hours of your most valuable time.
Now, what's really fascinating about this slide is how it visualizes the disaster. In the business trap, our energy gets completely flipped upside down. We spend a whopping 70% of our cognitive fuel on low-impact tasks, another 20% on just putting out fires, and only a tiny 10% on the high-leverage work that actually moves the needle. This constant decision-making on trivial stuff completely overtaxes your prefrontal cortex, leading to chronic decision fatigue. You're mentally fried by Wednesday, not because the work was hard, but because it was completely unmanaged.
All right, enough about the problem. Let's start engineering the solution. And I want to be clear, this is not a soft skill or some motivational platitude. This is a precise metacognitive ritual designed to reclaim your focus and literally accelerate your learning.
The entire point of this framework is to close the psychological feedback loop. Your week is just a chaotic stream of inputs, actions, and outcomes. Without a system, all that is just noise. This framework acts like a processor, turning that noise into a clean signal, codified, actionable knowledge you can actually use to upgrade your performance for the week ahead.
The ritual has 3 absolutely non-negotiable phases. First, you have to carve out the time block. This creates the space. Second, you run the diagnostic with the 5 questions. This is what generates the insight. And third, you codify the lessons, turning that insight into real action. This creates the change. You miss even one of these steps, and the whole system fails.
And here they are, the 5 questions at the very heart of the system. First, leverage. Where did disproportionate success come from? This forces you to identify and then replicate your wins. Don't just celebrate a victory, you've got to reverse engineer it. Second, friction. What created the most frustration or delay? This makes you confront the bottlenecks head on. What stole your time? What stole your energy? Be really specific. Third, system. Which process is repeatedly causing issues? This pushes you beyond just looking at symptoms to find the root cause. It moves you from complaining to actually diagnosing. Fourth, learning. What was the most valuable lesson I learned? This distills the entire week's experience into a single, powerful insight you can carry forward. And finally, reset. What do I need to let go of? This is all about emotional cleanup, making sure you start next week fresh, without dragging yesterday's frustrations into tomorrow.
Now you might be thinking, okay, this sounds good, but does it really work? So let's move from the what to the why. We're going to look at the hard science behind how this simple ritual physically changes your brain to make you smarter and way more resilient.
Let me be perfectly clear about this. This isn't some motivational theory. This is applied brain chemistry.
So this part of your brain, right behind your forehead, is the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. Think of it as your CEO, your command center. It handles all of your executive functions, planning, making decisions, and correcting errors. When you deliberately reflect, comparing what you plan to do with what actually happened, you are giving your PFC a targeted workout. You're literally training it to get better and faster at recognizing the signals of success and failure. This systematically accelerates the quality of all your future decisions.
And this chart illustrates the chemical reset that happens beautifully. An unexamined, anxious brain is just swimming in high levels of the stress hormone cortisol. It's constantly reacting. But when you do this structured reflection, two incredible things happen. By identifying wins with that leverage question, you trigger the release of dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals of reward and well-being. This actively lowers cortisol, reducing your stress, and combating your brain's natural bias toward negativity. You're not just getting smarter, you're actually becoming more emotionally resilient.
I want you to let this sink in. This process of reflection and codification physically encodes your lessons. It takes a fleeting insight and forges it into a durable neurological pathway through a process called neuroplasticity. You are not just organizing your thoughts, you are literally, physically building a smarter, faster, more efficient brain, one weekly session at a time.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem, we have the framework, and we know exactly why it works neurologically. Now for the most important part, how to actually install this operating system into your life. Here is your simple, 3-step user manual.
First, time block. Open your calendar right now and schedule 30 minutes this Friday. Just label it Weekly System Maintenance. Then gather your data, your past week's calendar, your completed tasks, any notes you took. Second, diagnose. During this block, your only job is to answer the 5 questions. And here's a crucial rule: no execution allowed. You are a strategist, not a doer in this moment. Third, feed forward. This is the most critical step. Select the single most valuable lesson and translate it into one concrete action or rule for the week ahead.
Just 30 minutes. That's it. That's all it takes. This is not optional. It is not if I have time. This is the single most high-leverage half hour of your entire work week. Treat it as a mandatory, non-negotiable appointment with your future self. It is the system maintenance that prevents the entire system from breaking down.
So what does a feed-forward action actually look like? Well, it's what's known as an implementation intention. It has to be specific and actionable. So if you discovered through the friction question that morning emails derailed your most important task every single day, your feed-forward isn't, "I should be better with email." No, it is this: "I will not open my email until after my 9 a.m. deep work block." See? This locks the wisdom into the system and makes the improvement practically automatic.
All right, let's bring it all home. We've covered the paradox, the problem, the framework, the science, and exactly how to implement it. It all boils down to one single powerful idea about the very nature of expertise.
We've all heard that old phrase, experience is the best teacher. It's wrong. It's just flat out wrong. Raw, unexamined experience is a terrible teacher. It lets you repeat the exact same mistakes for 10 years and then call it 10 years of experience. The truth is this: evaluated experience is the best teacher. It is the only real path to mastery.
So let's bring it all together. This system of self-reflection is the antidote to wasted effort and repeating the same dumb mistakes. And why it matters is that it provides a systematic way to guarantee cognitive improvement and accelerate your learning, week in and week out. That 5-question framework, it's not just a checklist. It's a tool that activates your prefrontal cortex for superior decision-making and actually reduces chronic anxiety by putting you back in control. Look, true productivity isn't about doing more, it's about mastering systems that make focus effortless. Your system upgrade is ready. Stop repeating mistakes, start accelerating your learning, go schedule your first session right now.